Hey there, good afternoon, and welcome to the Great Album Challenge here on Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today, we're doing the show that comes out every second week. So we have Ben's Album Challenge one week, the Great Album Challenge the second week. Ben is the author of both. I asked him to be the author of this one, and we came up with a kind of scenario that we think suits us. So what it is Ben's going to choose 10 albums that are his favorites of the year, and the year in question today is 1984. So he's chosen 10 albums from that year that he loves, that he thinks are the best, and he will rank them according to his own in the comments below. But I'm going to rank those albums according to how I see them. He's chosen an interesting bunch today, so what I'll do is I've at least listened to every single album at least once. Some of these albums I've known for years, some kind of periodically, and there's about 4 of them I think that I've only heard once, and that was when I listened to them just this one time. But there isn't a band on here that I'm not familiar with their work or their music, so I'm going to try and rank them fairly as I feel they deserve to be ranked. Obviously, the ones I've listened to a lot more are going to rank much higher than the ones who listen to a lot less. But some of the ones who are a lot less actually did much better than I thought. So we have 10 of them today, of course, as we always do. He's going to rank 10 of them. And I have 3 of the 10 props. So I will try and stick with them and give you the props where I have them. Okay, so coming in at number 10, originally I ranked them according to the way I thought I would like them, and then I re-ranked them after I had listened to them. So the first one on the list will be, of course, Queen's The Works. Now, a lot of people probably rank this album pretty higher, but I just never warmed up to it. It sounds very produced, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it's very poppy, very kind of 80ish, I guess might be a word to describe it. And just generally, I just felt it was bordering and along dance music on some cases of the album as well. And I've never really been overly pleased with this album. This kind of me is in the era of the music of Queen, where I really kind of bailed on them, I would say, go as far as to say that. There are a few songs on it that I'm familiar with, and there was one that I don't actually mind. But overall, my feeling about the album is a bit wishy-washy, but I don't dislike it. So it's not an album I hate or dislike or even annoyed with or anything like that. I just don't find it a strong album for me personally. So Queen's The Works comes in at number 10. Number 9 is an album that I had no interest in when I was younger. I still don't really have a great deal of interest on it, but I did listen to it its entirety, and it actually surprised me. There's some good guitar stuff on this. There's some really catchy beats on here. Not a bad album. Has a bit of a new wave kind of sound to it. It sounds a bit dated in some ways. The new wave sounds dated, but it's not a bad album overall. I actually ranked it over Queen, and it wasn't really that close. I think this album was much better, and that's Prince's Purple Rain. Not really an album that I would probably buy or listen to a lot, but actually surprised me. There was 2 or 3 tracks on it that I knew, of course, and then there was a few others that weren't too bad. So I give this album, comes in at number 9, Prince's Purple Rain. The next album up is the only one of these of this band's original 4 studio albums. I have the other 3. This is one on my list to get. I haven't listened to it. It's a band that requires more kind of listening to get into. At least it has for me in every single case of every single one of their albums. And it's their second studio album. I have never owned this album. I have owned their other 3. It's a good album. I listened to it in its entirety. I thought it's not a bad album, but it's going to require me to listen to it quite a bit, and of course it's on the list for me to buy. And we're talking about Marillion's Fugazi. So that's why it's, if you're a Marillion fan, you're wondering, well, you like Marillion, why isn't it ranked higher? Well, that's why it's not ranked higher. I haven't heard enough of it, and it takes a bit of penetration to get into it. So I think, given time, this will probably rank much higher on this list. The next album up is from a band who I have listened to some of their stuff. They do have considered a masterpiece progressive metal album, and I do like their stuff. This album actually, to be honest, I liked it more initially than I did either of the other albums of theirs that I've listened to. I think it has a bit of an Iron Maiden tinge to its music, at least in the vocal area. And I was surprised how much actually I liked this album quite a bit, enough to put it in 7th spot. So it moved ahead of 3 albums into 7th spot. We're talking about Queensryche's The Warning album. I believe it's their debut album. The vocalist has that very that kind of Bruce Dickinson sound to his voice, which I appreciate, and he does a really good job of it. The next album up surprised me quite a bit, and has really kind of opened my eyes with this band, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It surprised me a lot. Like, the sound on here is very clear. The music is heavy metal, but not as heavy as I thought it was going to be. There is some speed kind of metal on, no death metal chants or anything on it. This band is actually considered to be among the greatest, if not the greatest, metal band of all time. We're talking about Metallica, Ride the Lightning. This is my first listen to it. I do have maybe 4 or 5 Metallica albums that I got in that same yard sale that I bought all those Doors albums with, that I just haven't got around to listen to them. And I have never been really that motivated to get into them, but this album has kind of motivated me to maybe go listen to some of that stuff as well. So it comes in at number 5, which is much higher than I would have thought, based on the fact that, I missed one. I did. I just realized it. So this was number 5. So number 6, which is the one I missed, was Rush's Grace Under Pressure, an album that's grown on me over time. I actually detested this album when it first came out. This was the end of Rush for me. I never want anything to do with them again. I detested the album, and I put it away, and basically I never listened to it. And then years later, like this last year, I bought all of the Rush albums in the last couple of years, the ones that I didn't have, and this was one of them. And actually, the more I listen to this, the more I like it. It really has a lot of progressive elements to its music. It has a lot of interesting soundscapes and a lot of stories that are pretty good. It's actually a kind of a bit of a dark album for Rush, I find, but I do like it. It's heavier than I thought it was too originally, and my mind isn't as closed, so maybe I'm hearing it for the first time, although I have now probably listened to it maybe 10 times in its history. And it comes here at number 6, but still moving up. And then, of course, number 5 is Metallica's Ride the Lightning. I do apologize. I guess I skipped right over Rush. Who would have thought, eh? Okay. So the top 4 are all strong albums for me. Number 4 comes in at number 4. It's a strong album with a lot of radio staples. It comes in number 4 mainly because it's a bit more poppy than the other 3 albums, I think. But it definitely is good. It's got the classic sound of the band. It's got 2 or 3 like really well-known, stable radio songs, but it has some deep cuts as well. We're talking about Heartbeat City by the Cars. Yeah, that it's magic. Yeah, that was a song I never really cared much for, but the album itself is pretty strong for the Cars. So that comes in at number 4. Had maybe 3 or 4 listens to the entire album in its history. Not a bad album. The next 3 are all albums I've listened to quite a bit. One of them not as much as the other 2, and hence the reason why it's probably going to come in at number 3. There are some tracks on this album that I think are absolute killers. Some deep cuts that are really good as well. Some strong vocals by the vocalist, who's one of my favorite vocalists. And the The guitar player, who did not get along with the vocalist very well, is on this album. He's very strong as well. I think there's a kind of a synergy here going on. It's a pretty heavy album at times too. It has a lot of great guitar riffing, and so I'm talking about Deep Purple's Perfect Strangers, and it edges out the guitars by a little bit. Strong enough, but not by much, but it did edge it out. I think in time this album could become one of my favorite Purple albums, given a chance to play it even more. I have listened to it maybe a couple of dozen times over the years, but never owned it. So owning it is a big difference, because then you really can listen to it a lot more. The top two albums easily were the top two. Wasn't even a contest. Number two could have been number one at one point. It's faded over time. I got it in the year that this came out. I took it with me on my trip out west. I played it all the time. I fell in love with the vocalist's singing style. I fell in love with the band's poppy nature, but kind of an edgy pop, like almost a power pop, but I call it more edgy. They also sang a lot of songs that I think had, sorry, I got something on the screen here, that were kind of memorable to me. They touched off places in my life, and I'm talking about the Pretenders' Learning to Crawl. This is a great album. If you don't own a Pretenders album, I think this is the one that you should get. I think it's their best one. Yeah, some people might say Pretenders 2 or Pretenders 1 is better, but I think this one is the better album of the three. Like, every song on it is really good. And some of them are just fantastic. So, yep. So coming number two, the Pretenders' Learning to Crawl. Number one was going to be number one. I've actually forgot to show the props for that, but for number one, we'll give it the prop. This was going to be number one. There wasn't going to be any kind of argument about it. I like this album a lot. It has one of my favorite Iron Maiden tracks on here, Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Such a heavy track. Beginning of progressive rock maybe for these guys, progressive metal anyways. Aces High, another great track. Lossiver's Words, and of course 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is the stable rock radio one, is really good as well. I did like that a lot, although some people I know don't like it as much. Flash of the Blade, another good one. The Duelist. Yeah, it's just proliferated with great stuff. I love the album cover. To me, this is one of Powerslave is one of Iron Maiden's top 3 or 4 albums. Definitely got that really Egyptian feel to it on the back as well. So for me today, number one is Powerslave, and I guess I should have shown the props, but I got so wrapped up in what I was saying. So we'll just do it in reverse order, so that in case, because I screwed up once, that people didn't get the whole gist of what's going on. So number one is Powerslave by Iron Maiden. Number two is Learning to Crawl by the Pretenders. Number three was Deep Purple's Perfect Strangers. Number four, The Cars' Heartbeat City. Number five, Metallica, Ride the Lightning. Number six, Rush's Grace Under Pressure. That's a great cover. And in every sense, this album should be much better with me than it is. Number seven, Queen's Right, The Warning. Another great album that I discovered here that I think is really good. Maybe my favorite of this group's albums at this point. Marillion, Fugazi. Another album that I must have to complete my early Marillion collection. I have all their other stuff, really good. And Prince's Purple Rain surprised me. Comes in at number 9. Surprised me because I didn't even think it should be on here, but I kept an open mind and listened to it. It's pretty good. He actually has some serious talent. Number 10, Queen, The Works. This was the only really disappointment on the list, but I don't hate the album. It's not on the negative side of the number. It is on the positive side. Not by much, but still it's on there. Maybe the album could grow on me given time. So that's number 10. So there you have it. This is the Great Album Challenge here on Sunday night. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I did putting it together. And we'll be back for Ben's Album Challenge next Sunday. So please list your 10 favorite albums of 1984. You know, if you disagree with something I say, that's fine. But just remember that it is my personal preference. It doesn't mean that these are the absolute best albums of the year. It's also Ben's personal challenge, so you got two personals to deal with there. So please comment below, please like below, hit the subscription button. It's a new thing on the computer. No, button on the side there, and that'll help me and help you as well. So please have a good day, and we will see you next Sunday for Ben's album challenge. Take care. Bye.